Welcome to Construction Revolution.
The revolution in the construction industry isn't just coming, it's already started.
This is Construction Revolution.
Construction Revolution.
This is the
This
revolution.
is the revolution.
Construction
Revolution. Hey everybody, I'm Matthew Newberger, and this is the Construction Revolution. And you know, at Newberger & Company and the Construction Revolution, we understand that in the next 10 years, the construction industry will completely change. Why is it going to change? Well, because labor availability, cost of materials, what's going on in the rest of the world, all of the technology that is changing to enable construction to do more, faster, better, and even at a lower cost, and avoid some of the challenges in the past are upon us now. That is changing now, and Construction Revolution is all about educating you on the changes that are coming so you can adjust and thrive in the next 10 years, where we'll see more change than we've seen in the last 100 years. And with me today, I have Evan Roberts. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
It's always fun to put people on the spot, right?
It is. Yeah, there we go. I'm learning. I don't do enough of these podcasts. So.
Well, that's okay. I think people appreciate the authentic response because most people in construction are also not doing a lot of camera work. So I think importantly, we're excited to have you here and to have Clipper Construction here today to talk about some of the changes in the way you're changing the industry. So why don't we start with just tell us a little bit about Clipper Construction. Where are you based? Tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, sure. So we're a Baltimore city-based contracting company. So focusing exclusively on commercial construction, what we call kind of the small projects, right? So from the about 5,000 to about 1.5 million. And the reason for that really came from conversations with prospective clients and understanding where that pain point was, right? So where is there a huge need for reliable professional contractors? And it typically came down to those small projects where, you know, the alternatives were going to a larger construction company, asking them to kind of, you know, scale down for them, right? So the overhead was tremendous, wasn't necessarily affordable, or the man in the van contractor. And there's a few construction companies in the city that we think are doing a great job. The first thing I want to say is we've got some really great competition, right? I'm the first to say it, but there's still a huge demand, and you know, I think we're excited about the opportunity, and our clients are too. Most importantly, to have somebody that can actually help bring that professional project management, a professional superintendent, and deliver a good product.
Yeah, and that's important, especially with a lot of the challenges in the industry around rework, expenses. You know, even finding people to perform the work right now, or the constant change in material prices. Tell us a little bit about if you were to occupy real estate in someone's mind in the construction industry, what's your claim to fame? What is it about Clipper Construction that when people think of you, this is the unique part of your company? What's the claim to fame?
Yeah, you know, this was actually some messaging one of our consultants helped us come up with, right? But a Clipper ship was the fastest ship of its time. It could, you know, take tight turns. It was a very nimble ship. And I think we kind of like that analogy for our company too, right? So
appropriate for Baltimore.
Exactly. That was exactly it, right? So I'm glad you picked up on it. But that's, I think, the biggest value we bring to our clients is the ability to adjust on the fly and kind of meet their unique needs. So rather than a kind of a one size fits all, this is how we do things. It's working with our clients to understand, hey, what are the particular needs of this project, and how can we better fill those, or kind of fill your needs here. So that's I think our biggest focus. I think that and focusing on quality communication, and that's why I was excited about you reaching out today. I think this is a huge thing. It's something every client says to us, and it's something I'm excited to talk more about.
And it's funny, sometimes the little fish will eat the big fish in the industry if the big fish is doing it the old way. Yeah. And you've noticed some problems in the industry. I mean, I think it's, you know, there's sort of a gap that needs to be filled around communication that I want to talk to you about, because I think this is part of that being fast and being nimble. But what we've noticed is there's so much that goes wrong on a project. There are thousands of things that are happening on a project, whether it's a fit out, whether it's a ground up build, whether it's a retail or commercial application. There are literally hundreds or thousands of people involved in the project, not to mention all the materials that go into the project. Yeah. So communication is pretty important, right? If that's not done right, you're going to have, among other things, delays, costs, maybe even a lawsuit, a little bit of litigation to add to that.
Yeah. So I think you nailed it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's in a nutshell. I'm glad you highlighted the fact that things will go wrong. I never want to sit in front of a client and say, with us, I promise everything will go smoothly. Construction is too vulnerable of an industry. There's too many players in it that you have to work with that you have no control over. All it comes down to is communicating what's the challenge and what are you doing about it, right? And what does that mean for the client?
Right. And clients have, in fairness, Evan, if we don't position the clients right, you know, in my world, we're helping construction companies sell the project and get hit rates above 50%. But the client always expects everything to go wrong, or I'm sorry, they expect it to go right. But if everything goes right and you have thousands of people, hundreds of people, thousands of different pieces of material and things going into the project, even if you're 1% off, even if you're 1% off and there's 25,000 moving parts and you're 1% off, that's how many problems, right?
No, it's a great point. Well, and in project management, there's, you know, the critical path concept, right? So it's right. What do you do with each individual change and how does that impact a project? The odds of when you start to lay out a whole project, the odds of nothing going wrong is
zero.
Slim and none. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. 250 problems on 25,000 different moving parts would be considered good. The problem is the client doesn't understand that. And part of the problem is that clients don't like surprises. You don't, when you're managing a project, you don't want a sub showing up a day late, right? If you have, you know, if you have electrical going in and the drywall person's a day late, that could be a problem. So how are you guys, you know, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing to, you know, to help maybe solve at a next level this communication problem. Tell me a little bit about that. Because I think that's what our audience would want to hear. Like,
yeah, of course. So, and that's a challenging problem, right? And it's something I think all the contracting companies out there that we think are taking a similar approach are working on, right? Everyone's trying to communicate better. The way we're tackling it is we've created some internal software that we're using to keep as much information without overloading our clients in front of them as possible, right? So what that we feel helps with is by giving a place for that documentation to live outside of your email inbox. When you need to actually communicate something, it's not falling amongst the 12 other emails they had to get that day from you about that project, right? It's, hey, if I'm getting an email from them, we need to address this. So I think that goes back to your point. Things will happen, right? So my job as the GC, my project manager's job is to say, okay, well, what are we doing about it? And how do we account for that in the project timeline to try and still keep us on budget and on schedule? So
yeah,
go ahead.
No, one of the things I like is that what I hear you saying is that, look, things are going to go wrong and we need to have a way of responding quickly to what goes wrong. So there aren't delays and problems, and delays equal money.
Yeah.
And so how we think about and approach that is going to be very important. If we can communicate a problem quickly, clients actually do want, if there's a problem, they want to know right away, not at the last minute. I have heard from time to time about project managers who tell the client when it's too late to do anything about it, that there's a problem. The client would rather know right away. But could you maybe give an example of you've developed some software that really helps with this that you've been talking about. Could you give it maybe a real world example of a communication problem that's been solved without, maybe cleanse it so the name of the client isn't involved, but
Yeah.
maybe a good
So,
real world example of where things usually would go wrong, and this you were able to solve it in less time, less cost.
so I think by us creating a smoother process for managing some of the tremendous amounts of documentation that go into commercial construction projects, right? From submittals to gathering COIs to invoices. Um, by eliminating kind of the noise, right? It allows people to focus on the things that we feel they need to focus on.
Right.
I was talking to my PM about this the other day, actually, for this podcast, right? I said, let's talk about this, right? This is a unique challenge, and it happens so often you almost can't think of something specific. But something that she had happen on a recent project was working with the client. We send submittals off for millwork, and the millwork submittals, get looked at. The client is not a construction professional, right? They're,
Right.
maybe a property manager. So
Right.
they're going to look at the submittals. They're going to say, well, you're the expert, sure, I'll sign it. But when it comes down to it and you get to your millwork being installed on site, well, that doesn't look quite like, what we thought it would, right? So what we were able to do is by having that attention from the client, we're able to take that information. We're able to say, listen, look at this. Let me explain what you're looking at. And it's not that they don't, they're very smart people, but if they don't look at those elevations and shop drawings all day, they don't know necessarily what they're looking at, right? So
Right.
we're able to, get their attention when we need it and get them to focus on the things we need them to focus on that we think really impact the quality, the timeline, just keeping everything flowing correctly. There's not everything is an emergency, but sometimes we need to send that invoice out just because, hey, the contract dictates something goes out by the 15th of the month. We're not saying, hey, drop everything and look at it, because I may need something else from you that day. So I think getting attention on the things that need attention, that's what keeps projects on schedule. And, something, additional, a client brought up a situation. They said, listen, I worked for a contracting company for, 15 years before I was the construction manager for this, property manager, right? They're like, loop me in, I can help. I'm not, I want to bring my perspective too. Maybe I know a vendor that can help out here. So you've got just that communication, anything you can do to get dialogue going about things that matter. That's huge. And that's our focus with this.
So that brings up an interesting question. The CM could be involved. The owner can be involved. What about the architect? Could the architect be involved in this as well and seeing everything that the owner and the construction manager is seeing? Could subcontractors, the trades, be looped into all of this?
So that's something. So the architect, sure, they definitely could, and the things they need to view, there may be a significant overlap. Subcontractors, it's not something we're built out for yet. There's some exciting technology. I just sat down with a startup out of Silver Spring that's focusing on the subcontractor communication, right, and that document management there. And so there's people working on it, right? And I will say the one thing that Jeff Miller, he's my business partner, he was a software developer for 17 years. He is a huge fan of saying, I could build it, but why? If I can plug into somebody's hard work, how can we integrate that with our systems to deliver a better experience and keep us focused on what we do, which is build, right? So, so that's a great point. And I do think those are partners that need to have communication as well. Our software doesn't have that kind of use case figured out, but it's something we're definitely cognizant of. And we know that's just as important as that client GC dialogue.
So your target audience, if I understand right, is really that owner and potentially the CM who has oversight on the project, and certainly you as the project manager.
That's the majority of it. As we start to expand into other verticals, so let's say we started, we're working on getting into more retail, right? We're going to have, the leasing agent who may be fairly familiar with construction, but still not their day-to-day. But you're going to then have an end user who probably has no experience, right? Let's say, they run a bakery and they want to expand into a new bakery location. They're experts at what they do, but they're then relying on us as the professionals around them to kind of lead them down that path. Yeah. So kind of communication in those situations is even more important, right? Because now that conversation I said about millwork, we have to have that about everything.
Well, it's interesting, Evan. I see this as an application for chain retail as an example, or to asset managers who are in different locations where
Hmm.
they'd love to be able to communicate more effectively on the, progress of the project and everything surrounding that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have to physically get on site, that takes a lot of responsibility, stress off of them. And
Well, and I
so
think COVID poked holes in everyone's kind of methodology, right? I mean,
It
that showed.
it allow they say, right, invention, necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
COVID definitely made it so it would be better not to be on site.
And in many cases, you weren't allowed to, right?
Right.
So, or you could have a limited number of decision makers there. But if there were 5 people you needed to get feedback on, and you can have 2 in the room, you want to give the other 3 people signing off on it as much information as they can to say, I feel confident in where we're at and what I need to give you. And that, yeah, again, that really kind of brought us down that path of, giving them an area to have all that documentation. And then something else we'll look at in a minute is with 360 photography, right? Why do we use that versus just the traditional, point and shoot off of our iPhone, right? There's a lot of value there.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you've developed an app to help with all this.
Hmm.
And because we're on a video, podcast, we're not even in the same room together, right?
Correct.
COVID's made a lot of that possible, even though we're both, sort of in the Baltimore area. But it would be cool if maybe you could screen share, and I don't know if Jeff is Jeff able to be a part of this as well, your partner?
He's
And if
not
he
on the
is,
call
great. If
today.
not,
Yeah, we had a new employee start this week, so he's working with them today, getting them onboarded. But we can definitely do a screen share, kind of give you the client's perspective of what they're going to see in this app here. So what we're on now is actually the project page. So our kind of Gen 1, which is where we're at with this, is really kind of keeping it pretty simple, right? So when they log in, this is what they're going to see. And if I'm looking at, I want to know, hey, what happened recently on a job and I wasn't able to walk it. Well, this kind of jumps right out at me, right? I can immediately jump in and say, hey, that's my building. What am I looking at right here?
right.
So, we're able to actually walk into this space. We can look around, and this is a project we're just kind of getting started on, but we're able to see exactly where we are in each phase. They can walk through and say, oh, I never noticed that before. So, for example, we were looking at a job the other day, and we noticed some of the I-beams that were supporting the structure were bent. Well, you may miss that in a traditional photo. If you take it from the wrong side or the wrong angle, you may never see that. But
Right.
we're able to lay out, you're able to really see and truly understand what you're looking at and uncover issues when they're in the infancy instead of waiting until they have true ramifications to the project. So this is that ultimate what you talked about, right? You've got people who can't be there. They're, for one reason or another. You can't hide anything. I'm showing them every single thing about what's happening in their space. And that's going to allow them to really, feel comfortable with you as a GC, which I think is a big piece of why communication matters. But it also it helps us as a GC too. Let's say you're doing a TI and we go look and let's say maybe, hey, it was an outlet missed. Well, we can go back and see, did the sheetrocker cover it up or it was in fact an electrician's issue, right? So that gives us that ability to really kind of understand where we're at every single week and communicate that to our client. So, from there we can actually hop into just kind of any open tasks that they may have to look at here. And this is a test view, so we don't have a full project schedule, but we can put a calendar on here as well that they're able to see. We're able to show them, hey, these are open actionable items here. So I'll hop into this here. So we can see their invoices, any change orders that they have outstanding. They have a copy of all the proposals that we've originally sent them. So they're able to drill down and have all of this kind of one central database. So rather than, digging back through emails, sometimes people, have time to organize everything on their side. We kind of take care of that for them.
Right.
Create this.
So one of the problems in construction is really just document management.
Yeah.
Who agreed to what and when? And when things become contentious, this could avoid that contention. But when it comes contentious, people can have selective memory. Well, I never got that. Or you didn't communicate it in the right way. Or I didn't, you didn't provide it in a timely fashion for me. This eliminates that problem.
Objective third-party documentation, right? The 360 photos, this dashboard here, all of this works to take the he said, she said, the finger pointing and say, it's right here, right? So if I drill down into proposals, this is just a sample here, but what you'll see when I actually open that up is, they've got a full signed copy, right? They know exactly what they signed off on. They know when they did it. They do e-signatures right through our platform here. So
and by the way, I have to interrupt here because this solves a massive change order recollection problem.
Yeah.
You're moving on the site. Things need to be changed. They say change it. Yes, it's authorized. All that's in here. So at the end of the project, when you're presenting change orders, they can't say, I don't recall it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that's big for everybody, right? So when I say we're focusing on that client communication, the deliverable is obviously the most important, right? But this is going to make the 2 to 6 months that we're working together as stress-free as possible, as clear as possible, so that if at any point in time they have question, rather than letting it kind of bother them in the back of their mind till they get to the end, they can say, hey, did I do this? They know exactly where to log in. They can see it. And if it's not in there, then it's assumed to be non-existent, right? So this is their, kind of central documentation storage. It's backup. And many of them are still going to keep it on their own side too, right? We would expect that from them. But this is a great way to have backup to all the paperwork that you said. This industry has a ton of paperwork.
It does have a ton of paperwork, and paperwork gets lost. People forget. Conversations happen without paperwork. Things are changed, that kind of thing. So when we talk about stress, this is a stress reliever, so to speak, and a document management. What are some of the other stresses aside from just simplicity of putting all things in one place? Are there other things the tool does that, or that you want to point out that relieve or remove stress or problems?
I think, one additional challenge that we were having with this, and this actually helps us as the GC too, right, was actually being able to integrate payments into our platform as well. I think that's a big thing, and every client wants to bill a different way, right? But us being able to kind of get everything electronic, it's amazing how many clients want to cut a check, right? So if we can say, hey, we're gonna bring you into the new school thought behind this, right? And let's see, can we get that paperwork to flow smoother? That allows us to keep our subcontractors paid on time. That creates a better client experience, right? There's that trickle down effect. Every little thing that goes better for myself and my client allows us to create a better product.
And for the owners that might be watching this is important, because owners, if you late pay a GC and the GC in turn has to late pay their trades and suppliers, they end up with a different quality of trade and supplier on your project.
Yeah.
It hurts the reputation of the general contractor. If they want to attract the best GCs, the best trades, the best suppliers, they have to be able to pay fast, and they have to be able to pay accurately.
You're 100%. That's a huge thing. My subs will say that to me, Evan, I like working for you because I know I'm going to get paid on time. And sometimes that means I'm doing that before the client pays me.
And you get a better price from your sub. For everybody, subcontractors will laugh at this. They call it the win-win pricing. So if 3 general contractors come to a sub and say, we need a bid on electrical, that subcontractor does not give the same price to every GC. To the GC that pays early and accurately or on time, that's the GC they want to work with. That's the one they want to win. So they give a better price to that GC. To the other GCs, they give a higher price. That way they win either way. But they expect those other GCs to renege on change orders, to slow pay them, to say, well, we haven't gotten paid by the client. Yeah, all those games. So owners,
they're financing your project. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, owners and GCs need to know this. You are in one big partnership. There's not gaming anybody because it just comes back to get you.
Yep. No, you're 100% right, and that is that's what also allows me to build those deep relationships. You know, sometimes a lot of our clients, let's say they're a property manager, right? Not everything is a planned project. Hey, someone wants to do a fit out. We get a lot of, hey, Evan, I don't know what to do here. We need something done tomorrow. And I've got those relationships with those subcontractors that I can say, hey, I know you're slammed. Every good subcontractor right now is drowning in work. How do I get them to leave that other person's job? Because that's what's happening, right? They're choosing who to work for that day.
Right.
How do I get them to prioritize me and my client? Hey, we keep the money flowing. We keep the work consistent. We create a good experience for them. And that means we're going to get that service. And that's what clients want. They just have to understand that it's kind of a two-way street. They need to help us help our subcontractors.
Well, and communication does that. So I see the tool communicating on several levels, giving a visual that the client can reference anytime they want. Billing, any communication can happen within this tool. So as an owner, a construction manager, maybe even an architect that wants to see what's going on, or you, this tool helps a lot. So, you know, I think here's a question. There's probably people that are going to watch this video that are other general contractors, and they're going to say, well, Evan, can I use your software? What's the answer? Is this proprietary just for your company now, or is this open to the market?
I'm trying to avoid the shiny object syndrome, right? You know, Jeff and I have had an interesting career. We were doing side hustles before a side hustle was a cool word, right? So,
right.
You know, we came together when we were 22 years old, thinking we were going to somehow beat Zillow at, you know, what we were doing, right? We got started in building, doing residential houses for ourselves, and just slowly through time. And I can only truly appreciate the path when looking back in hindsight, right? And how did we get here? But what happens is if you try and be good at everything, I don't want my client experience on the construction side to suffer because I'm trying to build a software startup, right? This is something we have for us. It's something we can, you know, keep manageable, and we can continue to iterate and focus on our client experience. There's nothing stopping somebody from creating this. There's nothing overly complex, as I think we just saw. It's just not something people prioritize, and we think that's wrong, right? We think that this allows us to communicate better, but maybe someone doesn't agree. I'll challenge them. I'll say, you know, let's bid against each other. Let's see how your client feels in a year.
Yeah, it's right. It's not an award. It's at buyout, right? It's at completion. It's at those phases that make all the difference, right? You're not.
So it makes the phone ring again, right? That's what happens.
Exactly. It's, you know, you're only as good as your last project. So shifting gears a little bit, tell me, like, in the next 10 years, maybe in the next couple of years, what do you see as some of the changes coming? What are some of the things that you're keeping your eye on?
So I think you kind of alluded to it earlier when you said the little fish kind of eats the big fish, right? And with the internet and globalization, a small company my size can have a similar capability to a company 2 and 3 times the size. I don't need a controller. I can have somebody that can work for me maybe 10 hours a week that lives in, you know, Nebraska, and they can work for me when I need them, but I don't have to take on this tremendous overhead that some of these larger companies have. That allows me to be more competitive. It allows me to focus on delivering a better client experience than to shifting my focus as an owner to keeping, you know, the bills paid and you know, keeping taxes done on time, right? I want to outsource, and I want to make myself as lean as possible. And that's something Jeff and I talk about.
So what I'm hearing is a move towards outsourcing. And right now we know, employees, back office or otherwise, there's a war on talent. And there's a lot of people that are just choosing to work for themselves.
Yeah.
And taking those people in a fractional amount or the amount of time you need from them rather than having to cover their taxes, their payroll, their benefits. If they so choose to, have 4 clients in your one, you could have a tremendous cost advantage to a larger competitor. You could have a huge price advantage to that.
And we can get possibly, some of the better talent, right? These people who know how valuable they are, they may say, hey, I can bill twice per hour what I could get if I was on salary somewhere. And, it's worth that premium to me because I'm saying, hey, I'm getting all the value of 40 hours a week in 20. It's a net savings to me. Or it's something that I wish more people kind of took the time to understand. Why do we have, this fancy office space? Or, why do we have to have, 4 estimators, right? Could I have, 1 estimator and then rely on third-party takeoff services, right? There's just so many ways to outsource and delegate that give companies scalability.
Yeah.
That's our focus. It's scalability. And we think we can do it better than companies that were built on the 1960s mindset and they've been around, right? So they're not going to completely go blank slate. They're the Titanic. They can't turn. They're not nimble.
Well, they're saying, I can't fire Mary. Mary's been here 15 years. What do I do? Yep. Right. So they're a little bit stuck because Mary was also there working hard when the company needed the extra hours and the weekends. And that creates a very, this is a very progressive way of thinking. And you're talking about one of the changes you see coming is outsourcing and outsourcing everything. What can we outsource? And being open-minded to that is going to be important for companies that are the little fish eating the big fish because they can look like the big fish. You don't necessarily need to have those dedicated resources. I think you're much more consistent with macro trends we're seeing in the industry and in employment in general. If you can get what you need done by paying for a fractional amount at your quality, that could be a major game changer for, again, the larger companies that just can't make that adjustment. Their whole infrastructure has been built over years. They should be taking note because if they're not thinking innovatively like that, it's very likely you'll be able to provide the same project, better quality, at a better price.
I agree with that.
I think that's exciting. So outsourcing is a big thing based on your experience, and I think people coming into the workplace now are very comfortable with that. So I think you're following a great trend.
Well, and I think for a company like me or like Clipper, we're able to also align ourselves with people that are kind of like-minded, right? So those consultants are going to be that entrepreneur type. And they're going to have a different mindset too. And it's going to be more in line with how we want to take our company, right? So if you've got Jeff and I, these two kind of typical millennials saying, hey, this is the way we've always done it, isn't a great way to do it. We can't go align ourselves with people who don't think the same way and want to iterate and create a better experience, right? So it's surrounding ourselves with people who share that vision. That's what, it's kind of it's a really cool cycle we're seeing. So it's kind of a feedback loop.
Yeah, so you're actually creating a bit of a movement, and I would guess that the next generation coming into the market now wants that, and if they can't get that, honestly, some of what we've heard is that some people are just not interested in the construction industry because they don't see it as being progressive. We're offering a much more progressive alternative, and I think that will be something that will attract the generation coming into the marketplace now into the construction industry, which is very much needed. So
I think that's a great point. I would love to see more young people getting into construction. And I think taking a bit of a tech angle, the startup culture that we have, I'm not saying we need a ping pong table and a kegerator in the office, right? But just a more progressive mindset. I think that's going to attract, that's what we need to do when they're sitting there and saying, do I want to be a software developer or a project manager, right? It's a very similar mindset and similar talent, but they're going to pick software development because they're like, oh, this is a great opportunity to really make an impact. I want that talent to say, I want that person when they're in college to say, well, what if I did, construction management? That would be cool.
Right.
And it's the only way we're going to fill the huge gap right now. Finding talented employees is hard.
Now, I'll add something to that. I like that. Finding talent is hard right now, but you've got a different message, and I would encourage you to continue to drive that message through the parallels between software development and project management. But I will tell you, there is also one other common thing that obviously we're very familiar with, and that is that the most successful software engineers and project managers are good communicators.
Yeah.
It's not just the technical aspects of reading drawings, right? It's the ability to communicate with lots of other people to understand what is the outcome we need to get here with all of these moving pieces and parts that we've talked about. Yeah. So different question here. You're in your 60s or 70s, and you're looking back on your career, and the construction industry has changed, right? And I'm curious, when you look back on your life and you think about these next 10 years, what is the thing you want to have changed? What is it you want to be able to point at and say, that's where I made a difference? And a lot of people in construction take a lot of pride in saying, this building didn't exist before me, or what's in the building didn't exist before me. There's proof that I was here. Mm-hmm. But for you, what do you want to point at that you helped change?
This reminds me of a joke a friend of mine made, emphasizing the con part of contractor, right? So if I could change that mindset that it's a me versus you dynamic, right? And it's a contractor versus client, and I'm trying to get you and you're trying to get me. That stems from a lack of trust. My theory is that lack of trust comes from poor communication.
Yeah.
If I can look back and I can say, I focused so hard on client experience that they inherently trusted me by default, unless given a reason to not trust someone, I would like to see that restored to this industry, right? It's a challenge, because I think the perception is that our peers are not on the up and up. And I think a vast majority of them are. I think they just struggle to communicate. Well, why didn't the drywall get done today? Well, there was a reason for it. And let me explain to you, right? It's not an excuse. But if they don't communicate that, the client shows up and says, well, there's no drywall here and you didn't tell me, so I feel like you're not going to show up, and they start to get that doubt, right? If I can change the perception of the contractor to be a positive light, I feel like I've done something right. That would be the change I would love to see.
I would like to see that too. We work very hard towards that. That is a very worthwhile goal to change. And one thought I'll add on, because I really like what you're saying there. There has to be trust if you want better projects. There's so much litigation out there on projects that large construction companies build litigation into their budget. It's a foregone conclusion that we'll be fighting with our client. Let's build the company so that we're prepared to fight with our client. Wrong mentality. I get the sense from what you're saying and through the software you're developing that what you're looking to do is help to prepare the client better for what will happen during the construction process, so that it doesn't trigger a lack of trust, but instead you're letting them know, as an example, we're going to be showing you through our software when we anticipated things to happen, we're going to do our best to make them happen there. But if it doesn't, you're going to know right away.
Correct.
And we're going to let you know that up front.
Exactly. And it's a work in progress, right? We're always iterating, always trying to improve that. But as I mentioned earlier, the deliverable is, of course, the last thing they're going to remember. But what's going to make the phone call occur for that second, tenant fit out is what was the 2 to 6 months we were together like.
Right.
They're going to get what they paid for most of the time, but did they enjoy the process?
Right. And asking them that as we go, now that we're working together, obviously the outcome is a finished product on budget. describe the experience. What are the do's and don'ts of how we communicate? How is the software going to help? And how do we use that? Understanding that in any day, a truck may not show up. It might snow. COVID could.
Yeah.
Right. Let's recognize those things are possibilities, but that we will all make our best efforts to communicate effectively to overcome the challenges we'll have in the next 6 months. And what would you like that experience to be like? And then how do we use the software as a basis for that communication? I think is a great advantage. And hopefully you change a lot of minds in the industry, and this becomes a new standard rather than just a nice feature, but it becomes a standard in the industry. So this has been great. I love your mentality. We are very well aligned that the status quo should no longer be the status quo. And I believe that the generations of construction companies to come next will be the ones that refuse the status quo of what you just described. So I think your mindset is right for that in the future. And certainly I want to help you with, all the folks we work with in the industry to help change that and make those introductions so that you get your message out. Where can people find you? How do people get in touch with you if they have a project or they're curious to know more about the possibility of working with you? Maybe big organizations that do lots of projects. How would they reach you?
Easiest is right through our website. We've got a web form, makes it very easy. It's just www.clipper.construction and no .com. And if you put something through there, we've got a phone number. You can rings right through to myself or Jeff, and happy to talk to anybody about their projects, or even just to understand. Maybe you don't have a project now, but talk to you. Talk amongst ourselves, see if we're a good fit. Right? I think it's a two-way street. Let's see if my organization and yours are kind of on the same path, and if we can create value for each other, let's work together.
Well, I like that. I would encourage anyone listening to this to reach out to Evan. This philosophy is definitely the future of construction. Focus on trust and communication, focus on transparency in that process, and ultimately that leads to projects at budget and an enjoyable experience. You don't want the project to be, aging you an additional 10 years unnecessarily. So, right. So let's wrap up here. This has been very illuminating for me. As the software develops, please help keep me in the loop. Let me know. And as I'm talking to our clients out there that would work with a company like yours, I want to be able to share that message and, of course, promote the message, through this podcast of what you're thinking about, because we agree with it, and certainly the work you're doing on the software side as well as the construction side.
Yeah, so we've got some exciting other pieces of technology we didn't get to cover today that, I think, Jeff would be, very happy to share with your audience, how people in our side of the industry can help their clients, help their branding. There's just so many better ways to do things, just leveraging off the shelf tools. And, we're passionate about this. So this was really exciting. Thanks, Matt.
You got it, my friend. And we'll maybe even drop some of those hints in as we publish the podcast so people can get a sense. But look, at the end of the day, if people were to follow your philosophies and in your footsteps, the work you're actually doing, and the commitment, the financial commitment you're making, software development is not cheap. It's not easy. No. It's just like a construction project. It costs money. But if people do, again, it really also builds that trust so that you can do more negotiated work. Your hit rates can get above 50%, and you don't have to settle for itty bitty margins. You can actually make money while your client saves money. And all that comes from just changing your philosophies about how this has to work. So, Evan, I really appreciate you being with us today. This has been another episode of Construction Revolution, and you're hearing straight from the people that are creating the revolution. So, Evan, thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to more updates.
Yeah, Matt, my pleasure. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.